looks like we're going live now. Are we going live? Maybe we should go live now. There he goes. Justin. Getting ready to do the live show. Digging it. Checking connection, huh? Sounds good.
Guess what, guys? It's time for Torn Tuesday.
That's good. It's about time.
Your dose of all things Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I'm Justin.
Your weekly dose of all things J.R.R. Tolkien, the Silmarillion, and the Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings. And politics. At this particular stage, you cannot be in the American blogosphere and not be talking about it. That's just funny. We'll also talk about pirates, politics, and the poop emoji. We'll also talk about the poop emoji voiced by Sir Patrick Stewart. Yes, that's right. The poop emoji, because the Emoji Movie's coming out. We'll talk about pirates and poop and politics. Maybe there's not much difference between those three things when you get to that level of, parsing it down to the nitty-gritty. So let's start that live video. Hello, sir. Good to see you, sir.
I see Helder Smith. I see Hannah Took.
Look at that audience.
I see Elvish88, and I see Diane Teo and John Constantine. Hello, friends. Vicky, Ponchepko, Kaylin. I love Kaylin. She's posting some wonderful things.
Yes.
Recently. It's great to see all you guys.
What an audience! Wow, you guys are fantastic.
It's crazy.
Thank you.
I was just looking at the archives. I think we've done more episodes than any other podcast I can think of.
More continuous episodes?
We've been doing this
than
for
any other
podcast. More than
podcast.
5 years.
Streaming.
It's crazy.
Is it kind of nuts?
Yeah.
That we've never exhausted things to talk about and enjoy ourselves with. There's Dallas. Hey, Dallas Barnett, star of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug.
We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube.
Oh, wait.
We're live on
YouTube. Ustream.
We're live on Twitter. And we're live on Instagram.
Looks like IG is popping.
And if you want to join our regular chat, like the primary chat, which you can see right here in the corner.
Oh, there that is.
That is our regular chat room. It's at theonering.net/live.
Right there.
That's the main chat room. Although we do pay attention to Instagram and Facebook, but our main chat room is at theonering.net/live, where you can sign up and be part of the chat. and see the live stream and see all of our recent posts.
Good heavens, we've been active with our posts on Twitter. For heaven's sake, this man.
It's crazy. Like, well, let's look at this. First off, top of the show.
Look, hey Vicky.
Look at this
Hi
picture.
John. Hi Kay.
Look at this picture.
That's hilarious.
Come on. Everyone, we've gotten a lot of angry comments on Instagram and on.
Who can be angry about that? It's
Facebook
hilarious. It's
saying,
hilarious.
I look to Tolkien to get away from politics. Like, that's why we won't post this on the website or on our message boards, because the website is a totally controlled escape from the real world. But if you're on Instagram and you're on Facebook, everything politics is gonna show up in your feed. But come on, independent of politics. Come on.
Who would be aggravated by this?
That's a Palantir if I've ever seen one.
It was the first thing I thought of as Christopher Lee putting his claws over the Palantir. It is such a visual reference.
It was a joke.
It is. And you know what? It's a meaningless joke. So why would anyone get bent out of shape? Who would ever bother to get so weird about it? Like, who cares? It is hilarious to see an obvious visual reference. It's just hilarious.
I looked at this picture. I'm like, what is going on? I know our president is on a Mideast thing, but then it took me like a minute to realize, oh, Saruman is standing right next to him.
Well, what's hilarious is that somebody sent out a tweet that went viral. It was the guy who said, I photoshopped this.
Yeah.
And I think it was retweeted 75,000 times.
It's crazy.
And he said, I photoshopped Saruman into this picture, and it didn't even look weird.
No.
And that was the joke. To me, that's why I don't see why there's any affront. Nobody should take any affront.
I see Michael Milligan
it's hilarious.
and Letitia Greenwood.
It isn't weird.
I see Helder Smith laughing.
There's Helder Smith.
Smiling.
Hello, everybody.
Sarah is smiling. I love the one where Sauron is photoshopped in. That's the one we're just showing right now.
Yeah,
Sarah just mentioned
that. Well, hello, Letitia. Hello, lovely Letitia.
That's the first thing I thought
Michael?
of. I thought this was a joke, but then I see, oh, it's real. You know, the hotlines are open. The text should be scrolling above us. You can Skype. Skype is on right now.
That's good.
Give us a Skype.
Come on into the show, folks.
And,
come on in.
Or give us a text and let us know your thoughts, because look, we're politically independent. Like, we're not pro or against anything. Never have, never will be. As Tolkien, stated the Lord of the Rings was. But you got to admit,
I'm a pro-humanist.
A funny opportunity. A funny joke is a funny joke.
Yeah, and a harmless funny joke is also a harmless funny joke. It's not like,
there is nothing political about this post.
No.
There's
just
nothing
funny.
It's just that
it's a striking visual reference that we would be remiss to not observe.
It's not
we,
pro
the
or
OneRing.net, the Tolkien fan community, would be like totally turning a blind eye to ignore what went so viral and became like a big joke all around the interwebs. People were laughing about it. We might as well joke about it too. So yeah, everyone calm down. It's going to be fine. Welcome to the One Ring. This is the OneRing.net.
But let me ask you this: Why do you think
You're
so many
safe with
people
us.
were feeling that this had a political message?
Well, the only thing I want to ask is, who was the buffoon who said we're going to go and this was like a special event, and they had all these people there for the Agency Against Global Extremist Ideology, and they decided, we're going to physically have a globe of the Earth and light it up. And
Hi, do you have your video on?
It was such a silly thing. Who designed that silly
yes,
thing?
Yes, I do
now.
Place?
We don't see it yet.
We don't see you. But anyways, to answer that, no, I don't. The only thing I think of is who was the bozo who designed it.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
That's funny.
But I can't see you.
I can see myself.
You can see yourself?
Can you? Because we don't see you.
I turn it off, and
Hello
then
there.
It goes off, and is that better?
Welcome to the OneRing.net.
No, not yet.
Well,
can you see us?
Oh, it looks like it's.
I could try calling back. I can see you.
Ooh, God.
Yeah, let's do that. Hold on. Poor. Who just called? Sarah? Sarah. Let us try calling you. I love it when people call at the top of the show.
Yeah.
Like, this show is really interactive, and we want to talk to people, and we want to see people.
Thank you, Iravandi.
All right, I see a loading
That's
screen.
funny, Iravandi.
I see you. Hi.
My internet is not very good, so that might be why you can. Hi.
Well, hello,
you can
Pippin.
See me now.
Hey, good to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm now home.
You're home?
Yes, I'm home from school.
That's awesome.
I'm now officially done.
Are you done?
Yeah, I graduated about 3 weeks ago.
Hey,
Oh my gosh!
congratulations.
So you can be on the show every week now.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome.
Depending on if I work.
He wants to
Depending on if I work and the internet here actually works.
I know. He wants to put the ball and chain on you right away, right after you got out from under the ball and chain of academia.
How does it feel to be graduated?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So why are you calling today? Did you see what we were just talking about? Like, what do you think of the reaction to all these Palantir memes that are going on?
Yeah, I saw, and I was actually more surprised that you had Skype on. I woke up to that meme, and I was just really confused because there was no context behind that, and all of a sudden I saw that, I was like, what is that?
Yeah, totally. When I first saw it pop up on Twitter and Tumblr, I was like, there's no way this is real. And then it was like a real photo from the real Associated Press. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was really a funny photo. But I had seen the original photo, and it didn't take more than 24 hours before people started, putting in all these jokes in there. I thought it was funny.
Hey, everyone in the chat room is saying congrats, Pippin.
My mom thought it was funny. I don't know how my dad's going to react to it because he's a little bit more political than we are.
I don't understand how anybody pro or against, or no matter what side you're on, I don't see why people can't find the humor in the fact that someone is touching a glowing orb. Of course it's going to be a Palantir. I mean, there is no other way to do it.
Unless you want to be that Kenny Loggins album cover where he's holding the glowing orb and handing it off to like a spiritual crystal orb. Oh, gosh. Dad rock. That was a dad rock reference that none of you young folks would even know.
So everyone
Kenny Loggins, look it up.
Everyone in the chat room is saying congrats, Pippin. They're really excited for you. Let me ask you this.
And there's also a host of this show who wants to congratulate you, Pippin, as well. Both of us.
Him.
Both of us. Two hosts.
My question is, what was, Tolkien was a professor at Oxford for his entire life. Were there any professors at your school that had a big reputation that you might have been interested in but couldn't get into this class?
No, not really. I went to a state college, so no. As for reputation, maybe not because of school-wise, but because of how stupid they were. One of the professors got arrested for selling ivory.
What? Wow, that's weird.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you can't sell it. You can only keep it.
That's bizarre.
So what are you gonna do? What's next for your college degree?
I'm done with school.
You just need some R&R right now. Is that correct?
I've been in school for 97% of my life, so I need some rest.
Yes.
What time? When was the last time you read Lord of the Rings?
I don't know. Probably when I was 15, maybe.
So you're at and this is what we found with many fans is that when they hit new milestones of their life, they go back and reread Lord of the Rings, and they discover a whole new experience because they're at a different place in life. You have more just worldly experience now, so you read the books and you identify with a different character now.
Maybe so.
I have a hard time reading books over again, and I have at least 15 books that I haven't been able to read because I've been in school. So if I do read them again, they're in the back of the line.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get through the German Lord of the Rings, which I never will.
Oh my gosh, of course.
You read German?
I only know a little bit. I don't know a lot.
Oh my god, that's more than me.
It's more than anything, that book is special for me because when I was in Germany, I was wondering if I could find that in a train station in Munich. I found it, and my German teacher is the one who pushed me to get it, and then it's even more special because she did, and then a year after we got back, she actually died of cancer, so it's got a special place for me.
Oh man,
My
that
goodness.
sounds like it. Hey, we got a question in the chat room. Hannah Took is 2 weeks away from being a senior in high school. Now that you finished college, what advice would you give her going into her senior year?
Don't let the senior slide get to you.
Really? Like, she's been in school for so many years. Like, can't you just, like, relax?
The infamous senior slide. Don't let it happen. Look, it happened in the 7th year in Hogwarts, and look what happened for Hermione, Ron, and Harry. That senior slide did not work out very well, so just saying.
Well, it's great to see you and great to hear from you, and I hope we see more of you now that you're finally free of the shackles of school.
Yes, yeah. Come and chat with us anytime, dear.
It all depends on if I'm working and how good the internet is for the day, so maybe, I don't know.
All right. God willing and the creek don't rise, as they say back home where I come from.
Great to see you. We'll see you later.
Great to
Good
see
to
you.
see you, too.
Bye.
See, anyone can Skype us, so give us a Skype right now.
Please do.
Because
And
I
a
want to
text.
know. I want to know your opinions of this, because it would. The crazy thing is that we got anti-Trump people saying I'm unfollowing this page. I don't want politics. We got pro-Trump people saying I'm unfollowing this page. It's a disgrace. So this picture didn't please anybody. But true Lord of the Rings fans should absolutely find the humor in just any human, touching a glowing
Can I be
orb.
quite honest with you? I wouldn't care if that picture had a different world leader from a different decade. It wouldn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
anybody.
irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant to the Saudi Arabian leaders, the prince, the president, number 45. I wouldn't care if it was number 40 or whoever.
It doesn't matter who it is.
I don't really care. This is such a
non
non-political statement. The joke is the visual reference
of a glowing
only.
orb.
Yeah, it's just,
the fact that there's it doesn't matter. There's no political context.
Of course.
Because
it would be the same joke if instead it was a glowing orb. What if it was a glowing crystal podium with some little green crystals that slid into the white crystals? We'd make the Superman reference, and we would Photoshop in a picture of Terrence Stamp in his tight little leather outfit as the original General Zod, and we'd make the joke about, the little green crystals that we put in the Superman podium. It would be the most obvious joke.
If it wasn't a king,
who cares?
If it wasn't a king and a president, it would work if it was George Clooney and Brad Pitt.
It would still be funny.
It doesn't matter who's in the picture.
Yes.
The joke is the Palantir. But why do you think everyone ascribed so much politics to this?
Eravanda, you're hilarious. You know what? I just wonder who was the buffoon who wanted to design that whole thing and thought that would be a good photo op. Who was the guy who wanted to design that and make that a thing?
It's amazing
that they would turn it on by reaching their hands onto an orb.
But the interesting
looks
thing,
so silly. Who thought of that?
Yeah, I want to ask you.
You had one job: design an interesting ceremony. You had one job, and that's what you came up with.
Yeah, let me ask you this, or think about this.
All right.
Because I have something else to say. But the question I want to ask you is, this innocent, fun photo suddenly got ascribed a ton of heavy politics on it by many people on both sides. Just like Lord of the Rings.
Because people are very politicized, and
but
all of the
did
things.
Lord of the Rings get that?
All the things in the news cycle of the day will politicize any other pop culture that surrounds it. And yes, when the Lord of the Rings was originally released, it had been right around the time of the horrifying September 11th attacks in the year 2001.
And what about earlier than that? Didn't the Nazis love Lord of the Rings?
Yes, and when the Hobbit was, English fails me, but originally when Tolkien published The Hobbit and the German edition got over there, they loved it, and Tolkien was so popular with the Germans that he had to write a public letter to his, not a public letter, but he made a statement to his publisher saying, I hate Nazis, I don't want to be associated with their pernicious race doctrine, and Tolkien had to depoliticize himself. While not throwing himself under the bus, he still wanted to sell books. You know what I mean? That's a weird position to be in. Imagine saying, I disavow you politically, but I still want to be able to sell books in your country. And that's the position Tolkien was in at the time.
But didn't he do a speaking engagement in Germany? And isn't there a recent recording found of him addressing the German Tolkien fan club?
No, that wasn't in Germany. That was actually somewhere else.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't in Germany. No,
it wasn't in Germany.
No, it was somewhere in Scandinavia. It might have been in Denmark. It might have been in Norway.
It wasn't in Germany. But
no, it was not in Germany. No,
but it's not an understatement to say that Tolkien and Lord of the Rings was huge in Germany, in Nazi Germany, especially. It was huge.
Yeah.
Right?
Professor Tolkien.
And were they identifying? Like, obviously in Lord of the Rings, there's a good guy and a bad guy.
What you're thinking about is a piece of news where the Germans wanted to ask about his German ancestry before inviting him over for a book tour. Get it?
Okay.
That's how that stuff went down.
Okay.
They wanted to send this nasty letter saying, can you prove to us that your last name, which is Tolkien, which is a Germanic name, can you prove to us your Aryan ancestry before you could come over here and be part of this book tour?
Okay. He was
that?
He was that big in Germany that they booked a book tour?
And and he responded by saying, F you, mother effers, I'm not going to prove my Aryan ancestry.
Like Tolkien did not say that.
He spoke with anger. He spoke forcefully. In his words, he said, I wash my hands of you people. I want nothing to do with your pernicious race doctrine.
But buy my book.
And he's like, I do have a name, a hereditary line that gives me a surname which is of Germanic descent. But that's not. And he actually was like, I've worked with Jewish people who are great, and I regard them highly, and respect their authorship and their scholarship. And these people I work with are not to be put down by you Nazis.
Jean Bourgeois.
It's interesting.
Right, yeah. So let me ask you this: if Nazi Germany,
that's right, Jean Bourgeois. Yeah. So
if Nazi Germany really enjoyed Lord of the Rings so much so that they were ready to have him Tolkien come on a book tour, in the book there's obviously a good guy and a bad guy, and the good guys win. Nazi Germany, in our history books, the Nazis are positioned as the ultimate bad guy of the 20th century. So
yes.
were the Nazis identifying with the bad guys in the Lord of the Rings? How does that work?
No, the Nazis were identifying with the men of Rohan, with the Aryan line of the Nordic-influenced Saxon stuff. All that stuff that they felt was empowering this imperialistic legacy of their Aryan bloodline, and therefore granting what Americans call manifest destiny.
Yeah.
They were trying to justify their Aryan manifest destiny.
Okay, so you're telling me that the bad guys are the 20th
Why are you asking me? I'm not an expert on Nazi philosophy. I'm the last person to ask.
You wrote the movie and you wrote the book on the history of Lord of the Rings.
I am not a World War II historian. I am not a...
You talked about the history of Tolkien.
I can talk to you about Tolkien.
I know, I'm talking about in the context of the history of Tolkien.
That's the only way I can answer. I can't say what the Nazis desired. I mean, in the...
that's a good point. He says on Instagram, well, the Nazis didn't see themselves as bad. They thought they were doing the world a favor.
And
so the Nazis were the Nazis identifying with the elves or hobbits? Like, who were the Nazis identifying with, and why was Lord of the Rings so popular in Nazi Germany?
I read one thing somewhere that said they really identified with the dragon, with Smaug. That the dragon and his claim over the gold. And his claim over the, coming down from the north and claiming the resources and the valuables of the Dwarven kingdom was like their Germanic right. There was something that I read. There's quite a bit of analysis that's already out there if you guys want to find it.
And it's not something to shy away from. This is real world history.
Sure.
Tolkien wrote a book that speaks to every language, four corners of the globe, and it translated to film and animated in cartoons, and it's been translated in 190 countries. Like Tolkien's books, and in fact, good guys, bad guys, different cultures identify with Tolkien. And so it's interesting. The interesting thing that we found this weekend with this picture is that it's totally not a political picture. It is a funny meme of world leaders touching a glowing orb, which can only be, and it doesn't matter if it's Trump and the Saudi king. It could be George Clooney, and it could be Francis Ford Coppola. But if you're if you're gonna touch a glowing orb, you better believe we're gonna put a Palantir in there. That's it. And so I don't understand the reaction, the negative reaction of people that were like, I'm following your page. I don't want politics here. It's like there's no political statement being made with this picture other than here's an amazing picture of world leaders touching a globe.
We were talking about Nazis being very enamored with The Hobbit because The Lord of the Rings was not published yet. Just to clarify.
And so
to clarify.
And we got to that topic
I mean,
because
my mistake in saying that the Nazis identified with the people of Rohan, that was entirely out of any possible timeline. I have since then, since the operations of the Nazis in the 30s, now we're living in a time with other hate groups and skinheads who are trying to refract and bounce back the ideology of the Nazis from the 30s, and they are very wrong-headedly, but they are currently using the men of Rohan and the power of Nordic wisdom as their philosophy, blah, blah, blah. I do get what you're saying with that, but the original Nazi party, way back in the 30s, of course, the thing that they were most enamored with was the dragon, Smaug, and the Hobbit. Thank you, getting all the facts right about that, just to say I should not be so mistaken. However, it's interesting how certain cultural viewpoints appropriated long after the Nazis were destroyed and World War II was over.
Well, here's an interesting point.
That Tolkien characters and Tolkien cultures, and races and cultures have since then, since the 30s, been appropriated into other groups.
I'd hate to have...
It's weird, but it's true.
It is.
I hate that too.
I'd hate to be someone that has to justify that uses Tolkien to justify that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for saying that.
But that's what I want to get at. Like this picture is totally not political. It doesn't matter who's touching the orb. It's an orb, which means it's a Palantir.
Yes.
And there's no political statement made along with this photo other than, hey, I photoshopped it and it totally works. And so people were getting angry. And people were ascribing their own politics to this, just as people have historically done that to Tolkien's work. And
yes,
I felt a little frustrated seeing the amount of dialogue happening on our Facebook and Instagram posts about how evil this picture is and how politics has no room there's no room for politics in fantasy literature. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine what Tolkien felt when Nazi Germany is embracing Lord of the Rings.
You mean The Hobbit?
The Hobbit. And maybe some of these other dictatorial regimes embracing some of the characters and stories that he's created. Are there any letters or books or research that people can look into about Tolkien's stance on, different cultural groups embracing his stories?
Yeah, read his letters. Read Tolkien's, there's a beautiful book. It's called Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, where he was writing fan mail to fans and writing letters to his publisher and talking to people all around the world about these issues. So many great insights. And yeah, it's really worth checking into. It
John
really
Emier
is.
On Facebook says, when Germany asked if Tolkien was Jewish, he told them he wasn't a member of that gifted people.
That is correct, John. That is absolutely correct. So,
Bel Hernandez says, I know he hated Stalin. Interesting. There is actually a fantastic article about how some people are really retreating back into the movies and books to escape the stresses of the present day. And I think that's the core of what happened this weekend with this photo. When we posted on our Facebook, people are so exhausted from the news cycle. It's not even a daily news cycle.
That's
it's
something
a minute-to-minute news cycle.
That is something I agree with. Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that.
And everyone's just exhausted.
I was mentioning that about 10, 15 minutes ago before we wandered through some other layers of this conversation, which is always lovely to explore. But coming back to that, it is no surprise at all that we are highly politicized right now.
Is that a true statement?
What a true statement. Tolkien was totally against socialism and communism. I believe he said a few things along those lines. To get back to my sentence, yes, Dallas, I have seen that film, and I wish that I could cleanse my eyes of it forever. But thank you, Dallas, for pointing that out to me.
But people are just exhausted.
Yeah, since people are exhausted, you're right, and since there's so much politicized pressure on the news, we don't get a break here in America. We get horrifying, eye-opening news about our political world every single day, and we are exhausted. So no wonder people are reacting.
He was really offended with that picture And there's been multiple memes going on. This isn't the only one. There's like multiple versions of this meme. But look, a glowing orb is a glowing orb.
Yeah.
And I I've studied all of the religions and I've read all the texts. I don't remember any glowing orb being a religious symbol. So that glowing orb is a technological symbol. It has no religious weight. So anyone touching a glowing orb has got to be touching a Palantir in jest. I mean, that's just how it is, and it doesn't matter who's touching the orb. That is the
obvious joke. Yeah,
it's the joke of it is that someone's touching a glowing orb, and it doesn't matter if it's Trump and the King or George Clooney and Coppola. Like, we're gonna Photoshop an orb, and we're gonna have a good time with it.
I wouldn't care if that picture had my next door neighbor, Alice and Brendan, my neighbors. I'd be like, well, it's still an obvious joke. But you know what? What if it had been something that looked like
Ego's light? Good one.
The Ego's light. Hey, yeah, funny. What if it had been something that looked like lightsabers?
Yeah.
Then somebody else would have photoshopped in either Obi-Wan or Darth Vader or someone. And then we would have politicized it and talked about it that way. It would have been a silly conversation.
I just posted this thing. I tell you what, though, I don't want to talk about this much longer.
Neither do I. I want to talk about some other fun things.
But I will say this.
In the world of fantasy.
I will say this, is that
yes.
I looked at the stats on the Trump picture, on the Palantir picture. Let's not call it a Trump picture. On the Palantir picture on Facebook.
Yeah.
In one day, it reached more fans, it got more likes, it got more comments, it had the biggest impact that the OneRing.net Facebook page has ever had in the last 3 years. Like,
really? Bigger numbers?
The
one with the Saruman photoshopped into it.
That picture that we posted on our Facebook and the 3 we posted on our Instagram got more hits than almost anything else we've ever posted.
Really?
And about anything. Which tells me that, I can understand how social media people and even the ratings, newspapers, television, news networks, I can tell you that it can get addicting. It can get really addicting to that type of engagement, right? Everyone wants more viewers. Everyone sells advertising. The One Ring doesn't really sell advertising. But all these networks, I can understand how, why there's so much political conversation, because the one thing we posted that has to do with a world leader got the biggest numbers we've ever seen. And that can be really intoxicating when you see those numbers and be like, hey, if we kept posting more of this, it would be super controversial, but the hits would just keep on coming. And we're not a political site. We're not going to keep posting Trump memes. It's over and done with as far as we're concerned right now. But
this was just too good of a visual joke to ignore, really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't put out a point of view of advocacy. I don't have, of course, I have my own personal advocacy, but that's just from an editorial standpoint, does not represent the unified view of the OneRing.net. Not just me, one little writer, little show host. You know what I mean?
When I see those numbers, it's immediately addicting, and I can understand why all the newspapers and all the CNNs and Fox Newses.
Hi, Pixie.
I can see why they put this news in your face all the time.
That is why those other news agencies,
because they get the hits.
They get the news.
The hits.
It does. You know what? That is the actual. You have identified the causal relationship between
Hi Pixie, I love you too.
The way news is editorially chosen and put out there, and the way we digest it and absorb and take that information. It's really interesting.
Hey, we've got the Skype line open. You can talk
and to it. We're going to change the subject, and we're going to talk about how the state of fantasy films is changing, how the industry of Hollywood taking on franchises.
What are you talking about? It hasn't changed. It's not changing.
That's quite interesting the way it's changing. Didn't you see this huge article that appeared in GQ, United Kingdom? The GQ magazine online, their lead editor wrote the most amazing in-depth analysis. It's quite a think piece. Why Netflix is the death of cinema and the savior of film. We'll talk about Martin Scorsese. We'll talk about The Dark Crystal. And we'll talk about how Netflix and other streaming agencies are cooperating with production companies and production partners to actually change the way films are financed and distributed. We're going into a world now, Justin, where theatrical films are going to be guaranteed a streaming slot before they're ever guaranteed being put theatrical out in theaters. The nature of how movies are distributed is changing, and I find the most recent example, the most fascinating recent example, that Jim Henson and Company got into bed with Netflix and announced the reboot of the most cherished, most original, like surprisingly, shockingly original, one-of-a-kind film masterpiece, The Dark Crystal, which is now heading off to Netflix after years and years of the studio attempting to make a theatrical film, a theatrical sequel that never happened. Guess what? The movie that never happened is sitting on the comic book shelf right outside that door. It's now being printed as a 12-issue series, The Power of the Dark Crystal, by Archaea Publishing, proudly presenting that book in cooperation with Jim Henson.
I'm not excited about The Dark Crystal.
You should, but wait.
Why are you excited about it?
Because there's larger ramifications about how we, the fantasy audience, are going to receive our fantasy properties in the future, and it might not necessarily be.
Future. We're living in the right now. There's fantasy television
That's right.
shows.
That is worth
like
saying.
Game of Thrones.
That is worth saying.
7,
Exactly.
And there's fantasy feature films
Well,
that most don't do well.
I'm not arguing.
So
why are you?
No, you're arguing that things are changing, and I'm
They
arguing that things are totally the same.
No, the way these products are being financed and the decisions that are being made.
Me too. Bilejo Baines,
is
Dark Crystal
not,
used to scare me as a child.
No, it is absolutely fundamentally
still
changing,
scares me.
dude. You know the way.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not.
You haven't read
Quick,
this.
bullet point it.
Okay, Paramount, Brad Gray, out. Bottom of all the top
What do you mean
studios.
out? He's dead.
Huh?
What do you how are you gonna cite someone that someone dies and you're gonna be like, he's out?
No. Brad Gray resigned, not dead. Fool, don't shout and argue with me when I'm very politely and very intelligently telling you that the Hollywood business is changing. The business of where the money comes from and the decisions that are made by these money people on what franchises they're going to support. Case in point. If Tron Legacy is never going to show up again as a feature film because Disney said they're not going to do it, okay? Yeah, but he resigned before he died. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, of course Brad's dead. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, he resigned before he died. Okay, we're talking about the way.
Why does that change anything? That Hollywood is exactly the same as it was.
How does it change
20
anything?
Years ago,
Paramount,
when Lord of the Rings came out.
Paramount had Al Pacino and The Godfather.
Billy Joe, not Bilejo.
Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Paramount just said no to Martin Scorsese shooting his next film, The Irishman, even though they had, this unbelievable lineup of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, who've not been together on screen since Heat with Val Kilmer. But now you get a gangster film, The Irishman, a passion project by Martin Scorsese, and Paramount says no, we're not going to do it. Guess who said they're going to do it? Netflix. Netflix said yes to Martin Scorsese when Paramount said no. We're not going to make this film.
No, it did not.
The Irishman hasn't even been made yet. We're talking about a $100 million deal that isn't even dry on paper, dude.
I thought you were talking about
The Irishman. I'm talking about The Irishman.
A Scorsese movie where they go to Japan.
Silence? No. The failure of Silence, if you would read this information, the failure of Silence is the reason why Paramount balked at the most obvious thing that Hollywood used to say was the ultimate deal.
So let me ask you this. Does Netflix change your hope for a bridge Middle-earth film?
Netflix, even HBO, announcing that they're doing 5 spin-off series after the end of Game of Thrones, is telling me that the fantasy properties that we are most interested in having and consuming as a fan base are going to live and breathe, not theatrically, but in the world of Netflix and Amazon. I mean, look at Marvel. Marvel is concentrating so fully on the Defenders that they put out 3 separate series of Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, 4, Iron Fist, and Daredevil that they're throwing so much effort and time into it. And The Dark Crystal, all of a sudden, after a failure of that film to actually get on its feet and become a theatrical property, we're now going to get what you'd call a 12-hour film. 12 episodes. We're going to end up getting a 12-hour film.
Of a film and make it longer. We did that with The Hobbit. It didn't work.
I'm not talking about that. With The Hobbit was a theatrical release. I'm talking about...
We got 12 hours of The Hobbit and nobody wanted it. The Dark Crystal was a failure of a film.
No, it wasn't.
And we're going to get 12 hours of that? We've been down
what?
this road.
Since when could you ever get off saying something like the Dark Crystal was a failure of a film?
I'm looking at the numbers. Go to Box Office Mojo.
What are you talking about?
It's considered a cult classic because it failed at the box office.
If it was a failure and didn't have an audience, why on earth would the hugest news in the world... This is seismic news in the world of fantasy, and this guy has the incredible gall to say that Dark Crystal was a failure of a film?
What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Like, it found a home on home video because no one went and saw it in theaters. It was too scary for young kids. I still get nightmares over it. I don't want to see it again. And The Hobbit, like, a lot of fans that grew up with Lord of the Rings watched The Hobbit and like, hey, this could have been 2 movies. It could have been 1.5 movies, but instead we got 12 hours of The Hobbit.
When, you know, The Princess Bride didn't do well originally at the original box office.
And
Scott Weir.
Dark Crystal did even less. I am not excited for Dark Crystal on Netflix because Netflix failed with Bill Nye. I can't even get through one episode of Bill Nye the Science Guy, the reboot. It is bad. And I've lost faith.
That's comparing apples with boulders. That is not even a comparison.
What are you talking about?
Bill Nye Saves the World is a bad show, but that's not Netflix's fault. And that's not what we're talking about.
Netflix made that show.
The producers and the writers made that show. Netflix financed it.
Your argument
is so spurious and out there.
What you just said applies to Dark Crystal.
Netflix has nothing
to do for... You just said Netflix has nothing to do with the failure of this.
Bill Nye was never making feature films like Pirates of the Caribbean films. He was a TV guy. What are you freaking talking about, dude? You are on planet Claire.
I know,
you are like the B-52s wrote a song. You're living on planet Claire.
You're going to make a TV show
You're living on planet Claire. You're way out there. That's what Fred Schneider said from the B-52s. He's living on planet Claire.
It was much too eventful for one film, I'll give you that.
I don't even know what to tell you, buddy. But
and you cannot touch Pirates of the Caribbean. I love every single movie of Pirates of the Caribbean. I can't wait for this next one because it has Adam Brown and David Wenham. I'm mentioning
the way that fantasy properties such as Krull. What if they went to revisit Krull?
Krull?
It was a 80s fantasy film, and that's the kind of thing that's not.
I was watching Popples.
It's like
and My Little Pony.
I mean, it's really amazing to me when you stop. Where are the Wachowskis?
Didn't they reboot Fraggle Rock on Netflix like a few years ago?
I don't know about that. Maybe.
I thought they did try to reboot Fraggle Rock.
But Sesame Street has moved off of public television onto HBO.
Yeah,
okay?
Because they've been broke for decades.
The feature film that you would have seen of The Dark Crystal has now been developed and is going to be presented on Netflix. The entertainment properties that are fantasy, that are most interesting to us, Game of Thrones fans, it's not going to ever be theatrical. These properties are going to live in the streaming world, and even the Best Picture winner that just won from the film year 2016, Moonlight. Well, it was produced by a company that was paid for and supported by Amazon. That's right, Moonlight, which is a miracle that film even got made for a $1.5 million budget, was financed not by a big studio that is used to doing director-led projects.
That has nothing to do with Netflix. They didn't finance that.
If Paramount says...
Neither did Amazon. A24 financed that.
If Martin Scorsese says, here's my dream project, this is the gangster film about the man who shot Jimmy Hoffa. I've got Al Pacino, I've got Bobby De Niro, I've got all these people, and the Paramount people say no to you and you're Martin Scorsese, and the Netflix people say yes, that must indicate something is going on in the way that the Hollywood business and the paradigm of the studios and the way they've been doing it is starting to really, really seismically shift.
I don't think so.
You have not done the research, and you have not read the analysis, and you're making some very confusing claims about comparing Bill Nye and his poorly written show with
If you're gonna call Netflix the savior of the Dark Crystal fantasy, I'm gonna tell you that Netflix
I'm going to tell you
can
that
fail things
I'm going to
too.
tell you that Marvel is putting a lot of its potatoes in the Netflix basket. Are they not? Have they not?
Yeah, and
It has
ABC and Freeform. Hello from Texas.
Hello, guys. I mean, the funny thing to me, really, is that
Did Frank Oz direct Dark Crystal? No, I think he produced it.
It was co-directed by both Jim Henson and Frank Oz. They were
Was
the two
it?
directors.
And produced by Gary Kurtz, the producer of Star Wars.
Thanks, Sarah.
In
Yes,
fact-
my Fred voice from B-52s was quite good. Thank you.
In fact, the trailer to The Dark Crystal was pretty astounding.
Justin is listening to Cliff, but what he's hearing him speak is like Charlie Brown's teacher. Yeah.
Everything you said everything you said is just like Hollywood has ever been. There's nothing changing about Hollywood. Dark Crystal.
Dude, you haven't
Teaser.
read this anything
I don't
about
need
this
to read
subject.
it.
Well, then answer me. You're going to tell me that nothing's changing in Hollywood, and a major studio just said no to Martin freaking Scorsese?
They've said that so
and told
many
him
times.
they said that doesn't matter. What?
Hold on.
What? Netflix said yes to Scorsese, and you're going to tell me that the Best
This
Picture
is
winner,
pretty good.
Moonlight, was financed by Amazon, not a studio, and they're the Best Picture winner now. Best Picture. They won. Moonlight won, not La La Land. I mean, dude, something really intriguing is happening in the way that films are being chosen
Those guys
and
scare
produced
me.
and financed.
Those guys totally creep me out.
And The Dark Crystal would...
The financing is the same as it's always been. It's just that
No, it's not.
they're buying movies and TV shows, whereas networks used to buy TV shows and studios used to buy movies.
They're giving feature films a guaranteed presentation on online streams and devices
They've always been doing that.
before they even dream of reaching a theater. And you know what? They're
And
cutting
that
their
disqual-
losses.
and that
They're cutting their
disqual-
losses.
And that disqualifies them for award recognition.
Only at the Cannes Film Festival. That's the only major film festival in the world
I still don't
that
understand
has said
what this movie's about.
What? The Dark Crystal? The Dark Crystal, if you don't know what it's about, let me share something with my wonderful audience out there. It is one of the most amazing creations of Jim Henson's fevered imagination. And what an imagination he's always had. The Dark Crystal, essentially, is a movie with no human beings. It has all creatures, animatronic puppets, and giant creatures from the Jim Henson workshop, and not a human being to be found, not a David Bowie, and not a Jennifer Connelly, nobody. And it is a very quiet film. The entire thing is a meditation on yin and yang, and spiritual dimensions, and reincarnation. And these really, really mystical, spiritual ideas, which, believe it or not, were a big part of Jim Henson. Jim Henson never revealed to the world his belief in spiritualism, channeling, mysticism, and...
It's probably the hardest thing that I've ever worked on.
Listen to him.
I think of it as sort of a work of art. It's something hundreds of people created. It's a wonderful texture and depth to this world. It was the most work, it was the most difficult, but it was the most fun, it was the most rewarding. And of all projects, it's the one that I'm the most proud of.
The one he's most proud of.
Series.
Yes. There's the teaser trailer. When you get into this kind of conversation, you have to realize what a unique work of art. It was a handmade film. They didn't rely on any human beings. They went way off the ropes into something that was not what the audience expected. The only reason why commercial failure and the history of that is shrouding the moment when The Dark Crystal theatrically debuted was because people expected Big Bird. They thought they were going to get Cookie Monster and Miss Piggy and Kermit. The audience did not get that. What they got, instead, The Dark Crystal provided ghoulish characters that were the fuel of children's nightmares for many years. It was so amazing, such a dark and interesting film, and nothing but bleeding hands and craftspeople and artists who handmade this film. And I'm telling you, the ultimate conversation about why it's interesting that Amazon and Netflix are starting to open themselves up and open up the coffers to produce more fantasy things. I mean, the fact that we got a 1 hour, 90-minute Dark Crystal was brilliant. Now we're going to get a 12-hour Dark Crystal because there'll be 12 one-hour episodes. It's going to be so interesting. Imagine making something with only practical effects. You know,
But
all
there's
you
always
fans-
been fantasy television shows, and the Earth 2, Sequest DSV. Every generation, every 7 years, there's like a new round of fantasy storytelling. Buffy can be argued to be fantasy. So everything you're arguing is not true. Nothing's new here. It's a television network. Netflix is acting like a television network, and it's launching. Earth 2 got 2 seasons. Firefly got 1 season. There's always been fantasy storytelling. So there's nothing new about Netflix. It's just another television show that is greenlighting shows, just like every other network. ABC got a bunch of Marvel shows, so did Netflix get a bunch of Marvel shows. So, like, nothing's new here. It's just another network that's buying shows. That's it. There's nothing new and special, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're getting Dark Crystal. Like, we've always gotten fantasy storytelling, and we've always gotten fantasy shows. Will they commit to 2 seasons or 3 seasons? No. They're only committing to 12 episodes. If they get the views, they'll renew it, just like any other TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, once upon a time, back before this kid knew how Hollywood worked,
They took Grimm off.
they used to make films differently. They used to.
No, they didn't.
Back in the 40s, in the golden age of Hollywood,
No, it was still the same.
they would pick out pictures, and they would have a process
They would have a script, and they'd buy the script,
where
and then
studios
they'd make
would become rather reliant on director-led projects. George Cukor, for example. One great example, Cecil B. DeMille. Lots of these guys.
It's always
you know,
been the same. I mean,
Hitchcock, of course.
Netflix just bought a documentary about Orson Welles' final film because Orson Welles couldn't get a picture made.
Yeah.
But no one wanted to finance it, so he had to go
Do
to
you know,
the Sultan
that's a
of Iran.
great conversation.
To finance Orson Welles. Orson Welles, the man, the myth, the legend, had to go to an unusual source to finance his film. So this idea of like Scorsese can't get his film financed by Paramount,
Yeah.
it's not new. It's not unique. It's not original. It's not a different way of doing things. It's the way things have always been.
Not necessarily. No, you're actually, you used to make a film, and the film would be shown in the theater first. And then, much later, it could get syndication on television. And then, much, much later, there was the advent of home recording devices and VHS tapes. And then, much later, there were other laserdiscs and other home media formats. And technology changed. But at the time, it used to be one form of distribution. It used to be just one thing.
And
You'd
then
get
there
it
was
into the theaters, and then you'd get it on television later.
That was like
now,
that was like
you can,
60 years ago. Then we got
now
television.
you can get it on this device before you get it in the
has-
theater.
It's not new. It's not new.
That's new.
No, it's not new. There were film screens, and then there were TV screens, and then there were VHS screens, and then there were DVD screens, and then and now there's streaming screens. Like,
But imagine-
nothing's new here.
Imagine developing a property, and as you develop it and as you make it, you're not even quite sure if you're going to put it in a theater or maybe you'll put it on streaming devices.
That's how it's always been, though.
You might put it in one slot or another depending upon how you're going to cut.
And before that, it was either go
cut
to
your losses.
vaudeville or put it on film. There's always been multiple channels for your content that you want to create. There's always been that. So nothing you described is new or different or a different way of doing business. It's all the same. If it was different, we would see Netflix saying, I'm committing to 100 episodes of a thing. But no, they're committing to fewer episodes than television even used to do. Television used to say, hey, we're in for 24 episodes. Then or 20 episodes, or we're in for 5 seasons. Netflix is like, ooh,
But
let's just do 12
you
at a
seem to be
time.
glossing over the essential fact that a network, a television network, is different from a streaming company, is different from a film studio.
No.
That they are different businesses that operate.
They're all the same.
They are different businesses that
They're
have
all
different
the
business.
same.
Allow me to finish my sentence. They are different businesses that have traditionally operated on different paradigms, different business models, and now a lot of these are cross-pollinating, right? What's different now which is what I find this fascinating article on the United Kingdom GQ, online GQ magazine. It's a really interesting concept that the business models, at least from a producer's standpoint, like where does the money come from? The inception of a project. The people who say, yes, I like that script, let's make this into a project. That kind of process really is shifting. It's like a shell game, and things really are moving around a bit. More than usual.
I don't buy that argument.
Well, here's how the further argument would go. Game of Thrones, would it have ever existed as feature films? No. Future Silmarillion, will it ever exist as feature films? My opinion, if I look into my magic 8-ball, is no. It's something that Amazon Prime or Netflix might support and pay for, or HBO, but not for theatrical distribution. I'm just saying, if the Dark Crystal, which had been long gestating in production hell, they even hired famous animation director Genndy Tartakovsky, the guy who created Samurai Jack. They hired him to be the director of the sequel to The Power of the Dark Crystal, and it was a film that never got made. It always got back in turnaround.
Everyone's got those stories.
Now the thing that was going to be...
You're telling me that you wouldn't do Ringers any different now than you would 15 years ago?
Do you know what? Yes, because of the existing streaming capacity with these companies having new ways to get our content out on different devices, then as producers, I might have made a different decision on how to format my story and how to edit my documentary work. I may have made many significantly different decisions creatively in having a different format now. And the filmmakers and the showrunners behind The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, the new series that will be coming out on Netflix, they have an advantage now that Jim Henson and company did not have back in 1982 when they were working on it.
I don't think that's accurate. Tucker Gellert says they're only committing to fewer episodes because they're taking much more time making them and not putting out a crap product without the time slots to film on satellite. You don't need to rush it. I don't think that's accurate.
I appreciate that point of view, Tucker.
Netflix does have schedules. They do have deadlines. They tell people, they tell the producers,
Thank you, Kay.
Hey, you got to get this done by this time. And all of the shows that Netflix does has come in. And if you watch any of the documentaries or interviews, even what's the main one? With the first show that they did, House of Cards.
Yeah, House of Cards.
Netflix goes, if you watch any of the interviews with Kevin Spacey, he says that they had to make creative decisions based on the timeline. Netflix did give them, an open budget and a long timeline, but at some point Netflix was like, hey, we need to get this on the air. Same thing happened with that breakdancing show that Baz Luhrmann did for Netflix.
Yeah.
The Get Down. The Get Down's on its season 2. The most expensive television series ever made. $150 million for 10 episodes. Baz Luhrmann blew through $150 million. That's more than that's more than a 2-hour feature film. And The Get Down, watch it. It's kind of like, it's good. It's not great. It's good. So it doesn't mean that Netflix is the savior or the hero or anything. They're just another television network and film network that people can watch movies on. The thing about going to Netflix and Amazon first, though, it disqualifies you from Oscars. And
it didn't for Moonlight, and here's why.
It did have a theatrical run before it.
The production company A23, which made Moonlight, is mostly, not entirely, but mostly financed by Amazon. And they did make it as a theatrical film.
False. That is false info.
Okay.
False info. A24 is a New York company managed by former hedge fund investors that they put their own money, they finance small films, and then they sold it to Amazon. They are not funded by Amazon. That's a totally false narrative. And it diminishes the creative vision that the A24 guys have. In fact, there's a wonderful article, not in Esquire, but in Vanity Fair and the New Yorker about A24. And it's really important to distinguish them. They have their own money and they make their own decisions, and they take smaller risks with more genre films, and then they sell it to Netflix.
Yeah, it's in the Nomad District of New York.
Things. It's
just
just
in
like
the 12-story building.
Like Stranger Things couldn't get a deal with all the things. Hey, speaking of Stranger Things, thanks for the mention Jesse Jackson. I was gone last week because I was at Moog Fest. You know Moog synthesizers? The old Moog synthesizers, like ELO used to use and stuff like that. Well, Moog Fest is like a week-long thing, and I was out there helping the Moog Fest. They had a bunch of talks. Michael Stipe was there.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the lead singer of REM?
Yes.
You won't believe what he looks like. Tell me that this does not... Michael Stipe, the lead singer of REM. You know, that's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight, losing my religion. And Everybody Hurts.
Yeah.
I got to bring up a photo. This is Michael Stipe at Moogfest.
Yeah, with the full-on...
He's a wizard, Harry.
He's a full-on dwarf. No, that's like a totally like John Callan beard. That is totally like...
Is that a wizard or is that a dwarf?
That's a dwarf.
Or a hobbit?
No, that's a... Hobbits never have
He's
beards.
a tall man, by the way.
Hobbits do not grow beards or facial hair, by the way.
That's huge.
It's
so
true.
Michael Stipe has this giant wizard's beard, and he talks very aloof is not the word, but he's operating on a different level of existence right now, and he's very big into theatricals. So it was wonderful. But the reason I bring up Moogfest, not because Michael Stipe looks like a wizard, is that the guys from Stranger Things that did the soundtrack to Stranger Things. I believe they're called Survive, and they're a band that did all the music to... Oh, someone already bootlegged it. So they did all the music, this band, to Stranger Things, and they actually remixed a bunch of the Stranger Things music live on the air, and I love that people are already bootlegging the video that I produced there. But Survive, if you look them up...
Wow, people are bootlegging a video you produced?
Survive.
Okay, wow.
Look it up. It's on YouTube, surprisingly.
Hi, Happy Hobbits. Hey, look who just joined us on Instagram. It's the lovely Rices. It's the Happy Hobbits.
Hi, Happy Hobbits.
Hi, Happy Hobbits. How you doing?
So...
Good to see you, Kelly and Alex.
Survive did all the soundtrack to Stranger Things. And here they are, like, this is how they produce music. They have keyboards, and they have synthesizers, and there's no laptop screens. Everything's pre-programmed into their synthesizers.
That's the way they used to do it in the 80s.
Yes. But you know how, like, a lot of DJs now in the middle of this laptop screen, their faces lit up by the laptop screen?
Yes.
Look at that. They're actually just playing music. And this is how they did Stranger Things. You can watch the episode. Music.
I dig that.
Like, these guys are legit. So if you like Stranger Things, look them up. But I tell you what, it's risky. Like, it's awesome that Netflix trusts its producers to take a risk. Producers said, we want to work with these guys on the soundtrack to the show. And Netflix is like, fine, go ahead, do whatever it takes. And rather than using temp tracks, they actually did this. So
That's pretty cool. That's how they organically make their music while watching early cuts.
yeah.
That's really super cool. So you were involved in shooting some of that while you were there, huh?
Yeah,
So
we did
good.
a bunch of stuff.
That's really cool. Definitely worth checking out. But I think I misspoke a few minutes ago when I said that the movie production company had
I told you
A24.
misspoke.
Well, back in 2013 when they were first formed, one of the first things that they did was sign a deal with Amazon. Not that they got their money from Amazon, but they signed a deal with Amazon immediately when they were formed 4 years ago to get their products out with DirecTV and with Amazon. And DirecTV took the unprecedented step of making its movie releases available for video on demand at home for 30 days before the cinema release.
That's right.
That's right.
So Kelly Wright, the Happy Hobbits are in the chat room here on Instagram, and I just want to tell you, I tried to find your Kickstarter or your crowdfund, and it's impossible to find. Next time use Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something. Your shit's hard to find. FundDreamer, I would never have found that. I can't Google it. I can't search for Happy Hobbit Kickstarter. I can't search for Happy Hobbit fundraiser or audiobook.
Okay.
So use Kickstarter. But you want to talk about the future of Hollywood? It's not Netflix and it's not Amazon. They're not doing anything different. Their business model isn't different. The thing that's really changing Hollywood
I really disagree strongly.
It's this stuff.
Thank you, Corbin McBride.
Fund Dreamer. Look at this. There's a ton of stuff. Even Weta Workshop used Kickstarter. Weta, they have a lot of money.
Yeah, that's changing things too.
But Weta did a Kickstarter for their new toy and game collection, and look at that. They raised $935,000. Weta made almost $1 million on Kickstarter
in 4.5 hours.
In 4 weeks.
Thank you, Umara, the hunter.
So whether you're doing $1 million Kickstarter or a $2,000 Kickstarter like the Happy Hobbits are doing, you can see it on the screen. If you go to Fund Dreamer, she's right there. Just look for Darkling audiobook. You're almost there, actually. Look at that.
That's really great.
You're at 88%. Man, if we can get let's get Kelly to 100%.
Kelly is actually trying to point out very clearly that it's not for Happy Hobbit. It's for the K.M. Rice.
You are Happy Hobbit.
Audiobook for Darkling, which
Kelly
is an extraordinary
is Happy
story.
Hobbit.
Yes. Anyways, hello.
Wait, would you the Weta thing is not a Lord of the Rings thing, but come on.
It's Weta and it's cool.
We're always going to make that connection.
I will disagree and offer a counterpoint. What Justin just said a minute ago, that Netflix and Amazon are not changing film business. Take a look at the Wachowskis. They used to make movies like The Matrix, like huge movies.
They still make a huge movie. The last two movies had a $100 million budget.
Guess what? Now they're making Sense8. They're working with, German director of Run Lola Run. I believe his last name is Twohy. And the Wachowskis are, and even Martin Scorsese, all these great filmmakers who are finding it a struggle as the movie studios further their reach into branding and big franchises, and little films and medium budget films are starting to get made less and less in the traditional way that they used to get made. I find it very interesting in the future. To answer your question on the Instagram
Bel
chat.
Hernandez agrees with me. I don't think Netflix is changing it, but adding to it. This is exactly it. The Wachowskis took their television show idea to 20 networks, and Netflix is the one that offered them the most money.
Yeah.
They didn't change anything. There's nothing changing about Netflix. They're just like, Netflix says, hey, we'll offer you more money than those other guys. And of course they're going to go with them. It's not that everyone else said no. It's just Netflix is competing with it.
That doesn't explain what happened to Scorsese.
Kickstarter.
It doesn't explain what happened to a living legend like Martin Scorsese and the studio says...
Orson Welles got told no. Steven Spielberg got told no.
Exactly.
Francis Ford Coppola got told no. George Lucas
If Orson
got told
Welles
no.
lived in the day and time when there was Amazon Prime and Netflix, his career would have been remarkably different. He would have continued producing and directing films in a whole nother way. Peter Jackson got told yes, ultimately.
Peter Jackson got told no by 5 studios before
guess what,
Harvey
guys?
Weinstein.
Whether he wants to fight with me or not, I'm telling you, if Netflix and Amazon Prime existed in the year 1999, The Lord of the Rings as a trilogy of feature films might never have existed at all. It probably would have been 3 or 4 seasons on HBO or on Amazon Prime. I'm telling you, The Lord of the Rings would have been a whole different construct, whether he wants to agree with that or not. But I'm telling you, things are definitely changing.
It's because they're just another studio.
Things are so definitely changing.
Nothing's changing.
I love you, man.
They're the same.
I love you, man.
Netflix
It's
is just another studio.
It is hugely changing.
The only thing that's changing about entertainment right now is that you can go to Fund Dreamer, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, and you can have an idea for an audiobook, or writing a book, or making a YouTube series, or making a trailer.
Yes.
That's how Deadpool got made. They kickstarted a short version of Deadpool.
That's how the wonderful new MST3K, Mystery Science Theater 3000.
They kickstarted that thing.
Yes, it's true. That's very true.
That's the only thing that's changing Hollywood.
How is Don Bluth getting money for his next feature animation that he wants to make? Well, Dragon's Lair. He's kickstarting it, of course. How did Ralph Bakshi get his last film made? Through a crowdfunding effort. Yes, I agree with you on that. However, other things are going on here, guys.
Bondi, I love
Other things are going... Yeah, guess what? Someone in the chat, I forget who, I'd have to scroll way back on Instagram, said, how about the Silmarillion and the Beren and Luthien story? How about that? Yes, if it ever happens and they ever have the Tolkien estate grant the rights out, it will not be produced as a feature film, even though I hate to break hearts out there. One of my best friends worked for 10 months writing a screenplay for the first third of The Silmarillion. And I hate to tell him this because he's a really ardent fan and he's a great writer, but that script he wrote is going to have to be remolded for what will be 12 or 14 episodes.
It's just a creative exercise. But the real question is,
This is
Jeannie
interesting to
Bourgeois
me.
says, I wonder how Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit would have turned out if they were as shows or movies on Netflix instead of films. And I can tell
Yes,
you, I can
that's
tell
the
you
way
right
it would
now-
have been.
I can tell you right now, they wouldn't have been as good.
If it had happened 17, 16, or 17 years ago with where we are now, you would end up with something that was Game of Thrones. I hope we don't know if it would have
Lord
been
of
as
the
good.
Rings would not have been as good.
Do you think
And
it would have been Game of Thrones back then?
No, I think Lord of the Rings wouldn't have been as good, and
But
it
why
wouldn't
not?
have had as impact, because here's a few things: is that the studios exist for a reason, and the studios, like it or not, they have a value to the creative process.
Yes.
And we've had this discussion here on the show. We've talked with Jim Rigel, who worked for the studio. We talked.
Yes, we have.
We've talked with the producer Mark Ordesky, who worked for the studio.
Yes.
Barry Osborne was the producer on Weta side, and Mark was the producer on the studio side. So we've talked with all the studio level
Yes.
people.
Yes, we have.
Look, they bring valuable insight and important notes to the filmmaking process. And a
Yes.
lot of filmmakers say, I hate when studios meddle. Like it's not the movie I want to make. But we saw what happens when creative genius is let to unfiltered. It's not as good. I think the studio system served the Lord of the Rings well.
I agree with that, especially because somebody who was there at the studio had a foresight. He had a vision. And he said, Peter Jackson, why are you making 2 films? You should make this 3.
Right.
That was Bob Shea.
Yep.
There was somebody, and he had vision. And you know what?
And
because
they specifically said that
Bob Shea supported Mr. Jackson in this effort, it became what it became.
And
It's the
stu-
same way
and the
that...
studio is the one that had the notes, the first notes where Aragorn wasn't working out. The studio was the first one to have notes saying, hey, this Aragorn isn't really connecting. And so the studio, we can thank Viggo Mortensen, is involved in Lord of the Rings because the studio had notes. If Netflix had funded Lord of the Rings, they would have been pretty much hands off, and we probably would have ended up with no Viggo.
We probably, would have been stuck with...
Failure.
We probably would have been stuck with Stuart Townsend.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway,
I cannot even imagine Lord of the Rings without Viggo Mortensen.
this is true. Hey, Happy Hobbits, lovely to have you on the show. And of course, give a
Miss
shout out to our lovely K.M. Rice, who's a wonderful author.
Support her.
Her little Kickstarter's right
I
there.
wish I could link you guys, but it's impossible to find. Support the Darkling audiobook.
And that
this
is over
is
at
awesome because
Fund Dreamer, thefunddreamer.com.
the interesting thing about this Darkling book from the Happy Hobbits is that it's the audiobook is going to be read by a professional voiceover actress, and check this out, Weta artist who worked on The Hobbit and also worked on Ghost in the Shell.
Yep.
Amazing stuff with Ghost in the Shell, and did a lot of dragon stuff. She created a new cover of the book.
That's so
that's
cool.
They've got original artwork designed by Weta, full-time employee, full-time artist, and Shiba Inu owner, Lindsay
Love a
Crumit.
Shibu Inu.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's super good. Yeah, it's a lovely book. So
She's almost there, 88%. I think she can get.
she'll
her
make it
goal.
very soon,
But-
any minute now.
But here's the thing. Look, you've got the Happy Hobbits
And Pete,
kickstarting something. You've got Weta Workshop itself kickstarting something, and then
yes.
you've got Niobe from our friend Sebastian.
that's pronounced Niobe.
Niobe.
Wasn't he going to come
is-
join us on the show?
He'll be here next week to
Good.
talk more about this. But
Yeah.
he hit his goal in
beautiful.
less than a week.
It's because they're
he
great.
hit a goal.
That's fans.
And the
this
great
is-
thing, look, they've
this
got
is also
all
how-
these stretch goals.
Yes.
On this, and not only do they have original art. Look, remember when Sean Bean was on the comic book cover of The Untamed, And he
Yes.
was part of the animation project.
Of course, I've been talking about that for years, about
Yeah.
how Sean Bean is going to be this character in The Untamed.
Well,
I can't wait for The Untamed to be made into a show.
For
It'd be
this
so cool.
for this Niobe Kickstarter, they've partnered with Badali Jewelry to create some amazing original jewelry
Yes, they have.
based on this character. Some amazing necklaces and earrings. I can't wait, and chokers. I can't wait to see. We're gonna have him on the show soon. But this is
We're
what's
gonna talk
really
about that.
changing Hollywood. It's Kickstarter and crowdfunding, and the fact that you guys can support independent artists $5 at a time, $10 at a time, $100 at a time, and help make things real. Whereas Netflix is just another studio. Like, look, Martin Scorsese, he makes a movie for Universal. They don't want to do the next one, so he takes it to Paramount. They make a movie. They don't want to do the next one. He goes to Warner Brothers. They decide to make the movie, and then the next one, they decide, we don't want that. Then he goes to Netflix, and Netflix says, yeah, let's do that. And when Netflix doesn't want to do Martin Scorsese's next film, he'll go back to another studio. Netflix is not changing the game at all.
I disagree wholeheartedly. I find it quite fascinating to see that
Jean Bourgeois says, I still need to read Darkling. We'll have it read to you now, professionally.
Yeah, buy the audiobook. To say the least, one of the least interesting things...
Can we get Sean Bean on the show? We keep trying.
We keep trying.
He's a hard man to pin down.
Manchester by the Sea, where Casey Affleck regrettably won Best Actor that year, it was financed by Amazon, and I got that from
Manchester by the Sea.
Yep.
It wasn't.
And thank you for that was from the hotline. Thank you for our active chatters and our audience being on our live chat and in our Facebook streams and in the IG. Hello, IG, and talking to us on the live hotline.
Here's the problem with Netflix and Amazon, though, and even ESPN Films. Last year, who won the Oscar for the #1 documentary of the Oscar-winning documentary? It was the OJ documentary by ESPN Films. Guess what? They're changing the rules because ESPN is a television network, and they financed a show that turned into a movie that they released in theaters for a short amount of time, and then it won the Oscar. And they're like, this isn't fair. Everybody in this town hates that OJ won the documentary. It wasn't a feature film documentary. It was made for television. It was made by a television studio. That's how people are thinking about Netflix. And Netflix is at Cannes Film Festival right now. It's debuting films. And it's getting booed at Cannes. Netflix and Amazon are streaming services, and ESPN and all these networks. They shouldn't be in... They want to buy films and put it on their streaming services, which should disqualify the movies that they make for Oscar winners.
Then you're admitting that there's an impact. Then you're admitting my whole point from the very beginning of the show, that there is a significant upheaval and a change in the shell game of how these companies are distributing and how they're making decisions on what they produce and how they distribute. In fact, it became such a problem for all the folks running the Cannes Film Festival. Their concerns are so deep that they changed the charter of the whole festival, saying that any other feature films will never be allowed at Cannes if they're streamed first. That is how impactful this whole thing is. And you've been screaming at me for 90 minutes telling me that there's no impact in what's going on. There's a big impact. It's gotten so alarming to the people who run major film festivals that they now want to disallow other productions that were made for streaming services instead of them being considered theatrical first.
That's the rules. Oscars
How about
are
that?
for theatrical.
The rules are changing. Scorsese couldn't get
No, they're not changing.
Brad
They're going
Gray
back to
retired and then died, and he didn't have a champion at the studio.
He retired
And because
because he was
Scorsese
sick.
didn't have a champion anymore at Paramount shut him down. Now Scorsese
That's false.
goes to Netflix and gets his $100 million deal.
That's totally false.
It is totally truth.
Paramount did not fund Scorsese's $100 million movie.
Because of the failure of Silence.
No.
Because of the flop of Silence. That's why.
If you look at it, Viacom, it's owned by Viacom. There was a huge controversy. Paramount and Viacom lost a bunch of money. They're trying to merge Paramount and CBS back together again.
Oh, gosh, no.
They were like $3 billion in the hole because there was no Transformers. A Star Trek movie underperformed this year.
So did Silence.
Paramount just didn't have $100 million to give him. It's not that they creatively objected to Scorsese. It's just that, hey, we had a bad year and we can't finance this movie to that extent. If you can make it for $60 million, we'll go. You can go with it. And he's like, and then he went to Netflix and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll do it.
Okay, intriguing.
Look, we got 1:33 remaining.
This is a very intriguing show, by the way.
I don't agree with your... I'm going to send you some articles that you're going to have to read up because a lot of your assumptions on where the industry's at and who's the decision being made are not validated by the argument that you're making. All I know is Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Fun Dreamer, they're all... That's what's changing the game. It's crazy to think that Weta Workshop it can use Kickstarter to make stuff that they've always wanted to make. And this is an amazing time. The fact that some of the people that we love at Weta, they always have great ideas there, and they're like, hey, let's put it to the fans. And the fans give them $900,000 to make this game.
Yep, that's huge.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Like they gave them $1 million, 1.3 million to make Mystery Science Theater 3000?
$6 million.
Boom. That's a mic drop.
Yeah.
Wow.
$6 million to make Mystery Science Theater 3000. And the reboot, which is really good. Jonah Ray's fantastic. If you love this show, you're gonna love it. But if you watch the Bill Nye the Science Guy reboot, it's not that good. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to... we agree on something. That the writing and the production on that show isn't so sizzling. It's not that good.
So, look, we're going to have an excellent show. You guys, do your homework because we're going to have an amazing show next week. I believe we're going to have Sebastian from...
Sebastian Jones.
Niobe Kickstarter.
That would be Mr. Sebastian.
And it features Amandla Stenberg from The Hunger Games. I think, and she's been in a bunch of stuff. Let me see if I can find a picture. But she's basically the main character, and there's been a bunch of articles written about Amandla Stenberg. She's got a new movie in theaters right now. So hopefully she can. Sebastian will bring her along. If not, we just love talking to Sebastian anyway. But look. Do your homework. Look up Sebastian Jones. You can ask questions about The Untamed, his project with Sean Bean.
Yes.
Ask all about the Niobe.
Thank you,
and
Jesse.
all the Kickstarter rewards. I told him to bring some of the rewards so we can look at them.
Thank you, Jesse Jackson.
Let's do a Kickstarter to get Sean B on the show.
Yeah, okay, sure, let's do that.
Yeah, I'd love to do a Kickstarter to like just pay for people.
Gosh.
Like, let's get Vigo over here. Let's get Sean over here. Let's get Liv Tyler in here.
I had a nice chit chat with Adam Brown because he was just here in Los Angeles a few days ago, and we missed him. He had to come out for that world premiere event for Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Yeah, he's in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Number 5 in that installment. That's number 5 installment in that series. That's what I meant to say.
The new Pirates of the Caribbean movie has Adam Brown, Ori.
And it has David Wenham, Faramir.
Wait, Faramir's in it?
And it has Orlando Bloom, Legolas, Jelly Leggy.
Wait, Faramir is in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yep. And guess who else?
Who else?
Paul McCartney. Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes, Paul
Boo.
McCartney. Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Boo.
Haven't you seen the pictures?
Boo.
Why would you say boo? I think that's one of the coolest things ever, that Paul McCartney
I'm excited
is going to be dressed
David
as a
Wenham.
pirate.
I'm excited about David Wenham and Adam Brown in Pirates of the Caribbean. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited to see all of them.
Hey, thank you for joining us. We're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific at theonering.net/live. We film from Meltdown Comics in the middle of Hollywood. The door is always open. If you guys are ever in Hollywood on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock under the setting sun,
on a
harvest moon,
on the Sunset Boulevard.
Please come to Meltdown Comics in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, and you can be a part of the show.
If you stand by the gray stone when the thrush knocks, and the last light of the setting sun of Durin's day will shine...
No booing, Paul.
...upon the keyhole.
I can boo Paul. It's not the real Paul.
It's really Paul McCartney.
No, Paul died in the 60s. This is Paul...
Oh, my God.
This is the fake Paul.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to sign off, and I love you. You're the best audience ever. Yes, bring the boxing gloves next week. And before we go, Brittany, thank you for being such a kind member of our audience. I have to say one last thing to our very, very broad audience all across the world, and especially we bring our attention to our United Kingdom fans and audience members. We are sending our thoughts and our prayers and our money in donations, literal donations, to the emergency responders. There are many charities that are set up in Manchester after the horrifying events of this bombing that just happened at the major stadium event outside the Ariana Grande concert. And to say the least, our love and our fears and our concerns and our support, all of them are all with you. We have many, many fans in the Wales area, in Scotland, in England, all across the United Kingdom, who are regularly with us at theonering.net. We have a wide community, and that community is a very wide fabric, and it includes all of you. We want you to stay safe and be with your loved ones and be safe at home, and look online.
And don't get scared.
Look online.
No one in Lord of the Rings got scared. Even if they were scared, they still went out and lived their life and went into battle.
For the British Red Cross, for the services, the organizations that are helping those people in need in Manchester, you can find information online
Don't let
to make
terrorism
donations.
win, and don't get scared of going out in public.
That's right.
Go to all the concerts. Go to
all the
shopping
shows. Go to all the.
networks.
Don't ever let those bastards dictate your life.
That's right.
Don't ever let anybody dictate your life to you. Live and live well and be safe. And we take a moment to respond with prayer and thought for the victims and their families at this time. So we just have to say that, and it's really good for us to help out our fellow man. And there are a lot of rescue organizations and paramedics teams that could use a few dollars. You could donate, right? Good stuff. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
It's really good to have you guys with us on this very lively conversation.
I see keep calm and carry on. I see I see live long and prosper. What's the Lord of the Rings version of those quick quotes?
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There you go. That's that. And yes, rest in peace, Roger Moore. He was my James Bond. The Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, To Live and Let Die. That was my James Bond. Good night, sweet Sir Roger Moore. You were really awesome. You were awesome. And thank you guys for joining us again on theonering.net. We'll see you next Tuesday with a much more lively conversation with Sebastian Jones from Stranger Comics, the creator and writer of both the Stranger series, which is featuring Sean Bean as one of the lead characters, and we've got maybe we'll get Amandla Stenberg from Hunger Games. Maybe she'll come and join us if we're lucky sometime soon, and we'll talk about their Kickstarter for Niobe comic book series. It's really lovely stuff.
Yes.
Really good stuff. We'll see you guys next week.
Get your questions ready.
Yeah, get your questions ready. Everybody, be good to yourselves. Good night. Thank you for joining us. Boom.
Boom.
Ooh, that was a lively conversation, wasn't it?